So I'll end the poll and I'll share the results. We have charts, surprisingly, and Excel. Isn't that great? As being the most exciting elements of the 17 release. But that untitled option 1 were pretty popular on 3 and 4 too, 100%. It's impressive. Always start at the top. Maybe if I'd restructured the questions, would have got a different answer. No, not sure yet. It's halfway down. All right, so that was interesting. Let's hook in. So this webinar is basically the conclusion of a series. And yes, perhaps multiple choice on that question. The second poll is multiple choice, so I don't lock you in on an answer. Yeah, this is the end of a series of webinars. There's been 6. If you've missed any of them, you can access them through our YouTube channel. But I really appreciate you showing up and being a bit more interactive. We can then discuss any issues or get your feedback on the polls and the like. Still one of those outstanding questions as to how we're going to engage with people to come into the webinar when we record and share so broadly. Maybe we'll lock them down a little more. But that kind of defeats the purpose too. So we want to get this information out. So this is the last one. And what I'm going to do is basically go through the main features of UniPhi 17. That's as has been described in our blog. There's still a few more entries to go, but on our corporate blog, all the different elements of UniPhi 17 have been described there. So in addition to these webinars, you can refer to this blog to find out what other new things are happening across UniPhi 17. These are sort of supplanting patch notes, because patch notes aren't really going to cover it on this size of an upgrade. It's quite substantial. There are 2 main elements of change in UniPhi 17. The first is we have charts, as was the highest voted new feature, and they're embedded throughout the application and will be growing subsequently to this release with more enhanced features to allow for customization around those. Not so much in what the chart looks like, but replacing certain charts with other charts and having a collection of charts that you can bring into different settings within the application. So that's the first one. The second is the rewrite of the contracts module. And so this webinar will take you through those 2 high-level changes. So they're the main changes that are coming out as of the live date, which is the 1st of July, being Thursday. So to start off with charts, basically the way that's been created, it's using a new technology. It's not using Power BI or anything like that. You can still use Power BI and embed those into UniPhi for your own custom graphs, but it's using a new technology and contextual information depending on the screen you're in. And so the first one I can show is actually within a project. This sub-navigation has changed a bit in UniPhi 17. And you've got the edit view, which will only be available to administrators generally or program managers. And then you have details, which will be where most people go. And it basically gives you the information on the project itself, both graphically and through some high-level information, a description on the project, its metadata tagging that has been done against it. And so if someone's new to the business and they want to know about a project, they can come in and have a look and find out, what it's about, what its status is, how it's tracking, and then start to explore further into that by going into the relevant modules to find out a little bit more about these particular pieces of information. And so, as I said, over time, you'll be able to lay out your own set of graphs in this particular screen, and there will be portfolio summary graphs. At the moment, they're not there in 17. But then as you go across the system, portfolio relationships do come in. And so I've just gone to documents and gone to all projects. And you've got 4 charts there that I should have done a question on graph or chart. What's your preference? But I'll use the words interchangeably. And what I like about these graphs is they are very interactive in the way that UniPhi filters. So for example, if I was to select one of my favorite templates, being the old box culvert surveillance record. And so these are very heavily created documents in some of our deployments where engineers are out in the field using our on-site app and capturing site photos and checklists and the like for different road surveillances. And you can see here there's a number across the portfolio, and the chart is updated to reflect what's basically being seen in the grid below. That can be extended. I don't think many people really use, it's not a 17 feature, but the advanced search in documents. So there's a generic search across all pages in UniPhi, this little magnifying glass up here near the UK flag. And that just searches the table grid that you're looking at, whereas this does a deeper search within the data behind for documents. And you can see that because I've selected surveillance record box culvert, it gives me any of the drop-down lists that might have existed in that UniPhi document. So when you create this as a UniPhi document, there's a bunch of steps and you can fill in stuff. Some's text, some's dates, and some are drop-downs. And so this enables me to select, for example, those three options and hit search, and the list below now reduces again, and there's only one with one of those options. I had to pick three because I lost my option that I was going to select, but anyway, to get some results. And so this is constantly being updated with that information, which I think will, in these particular examples, when you've got rich, hundreds and hundreds of documents in here, could assist you in finding out how many foundation surveillances you did, for example. Equally, you've got project start and end date modified before and after, and then this keyword searches an index of the text document as well. So you can do free text searching in there. That's a little bit more extensive than the search up the top. And again, the key there with the graphs is that you get that updated information in this screen. One of the tricks for people when doing this filtering is to make sure you reset filters. Otherwise, they go, "Hey, where's my document gone?" And they can't see it. So that's something worth doing every now and then if you know you've finished your analysis. And the other thing is when you're using UniPhi frequently, we've added a toggle button for the charts, because sometimes you're not really analyzing information, you're just creating content, and they kind of get in the road. So if you tick that box, they're basically back to the tabular interfaces that people would be familiar with who have used UniPhi over the years. So turning that back on, as I go across the different modules, you'll see different charts. The issues one for me has been interesting because I'm using the sales category in our system. We use it as a CRM, and I basically am able to track this timeline of issues here and see whether it's trending up. Thankfully, this isn't my deployment; it's major projects, not dog food. And but we've had a few sales leads come in the period. Obviously, it's a net, because we're looking at open. You could go all and got all issues over time and changes a bit. But how many were closed? And so you can do some embedded analysis around that. In construction design management, probably RFIs would be an interesting one to track there as well. I know for a client of ours who uses the Power BI dashboard to do that, and this is kind of a replica of that, of how many are open across periods and whether it's going up or not. And I think there's some learnings that can be made around that. Risks, and that again changes when you drill in on a project. To just being that project's view. Risks are trends. So again, data quality required, but you can see here that over time, the current profile is getting more risky. But even though we've been able to manage to get the treated profile to be less risky by having more low rated in the future. So the idea is being that these high rated, once we treat them, will become low rated in the future, which is why that's gone up. So we're believing in our treatment plan at the moment. And that can just give an overall sense of whether the business is, either using the system more or potentially, if it always has been well used, having more risks enter into the application. There are a few changes to the risk system in UniPhi 17 as well. That's worth having explore when you upgrade, just relaying out of fields based off some feedback from some clients. And obviously, again, this can be then viewed down into sectors by selecting the filters there and getting a different profile for different sectors or project types or service lines or locations, whichever filter takes your fancy, or combinations thereof. The time dashboard is a new module. What it's done is taken the schedule and the milestone data capture out of the summary screen, which gives us more sub-nav in the summary screen for other things, and brought in a portfolio and project high-level Gantt. These Gantts integrate with the contract scheduling as well, so you can get both lifecycle scheduling, contract scheduling, and milestones all displayed within the one. And you can just basically then see across the portfolio where projects are at. And if you wanted to drill in on one, you can click on it and you get the timeline for that particular project If there were contract information in there, you would get that in addition. And milestones, if they were populated, would come in as well. So if I was to put a milestone in here, I'll just get the date right. Oh, we're back in time. And put a relevant date on it. You'll see that there'll be a little diamond come up with a bit of luck. There it is. It was because there was no baseline for that. This is the forecast. And so you get the diamonds in. Contract dates coming in here as well. So you can see when contract awarded dates are, contract practical completion dates are along these life cycle phases, as well as any deliverable schedules that you've brought into that, to that module. Revenue and cost are quite interesting as well. They have some nice S-curved outcomes. I'll jump to costs and go to all projects so we get some information. Well, that one's not too bad. It doesn't give us cash flow for this project, so we'll go and have a look at that at the moment. But an interesting breakup of the type of contracts that have been let. So a lot of consultant contracts, construction contract, they're making up most of it. And how we're tracking, we've spent a lot of money, even though we'd phased budget of nothing. So these dials are quite communicative. And I think with the data quality being a bit better, it could be quite instructive. So looking at this particular all projects, the code structures changed to cash flow, and we've got a baseline profile going along there and our forecast actuals coming in here. We've also got the fact that we're well behind, as demonstrated by the cash flow here, where we've only spent 37 million. We thought we would have spent 330 million, and we haven't phased out much of our remainder either. So again, data quality missing there. So a good sense check on number of factors. Is the data being maintained? But also once you're confident in the data set, exactly how you're tracking to some targets. So this requires phased budgets to be able to get that line. So it's not the whole budget, it's how far it was going to be up until April. This actuals too is a new thing in UniPhi, so you don't have to wait for the financial period to close to find out what actuals are in the month. So you can change this into the future, and it'll, if you've got June actuals that haven't been closed by the finance department, it'll still display. And especially more important on project costs when you're tracking someone else's money and you want to see actuals to a certain point in time. So revenue and cost, same charting. I won't do feasibility. It's a module not many people are using. And then in contracts, it has its own graphs as well. And then I'm going to spend the rest of the webinar in contracts because that's where most of the other changes have come from. And the sort of my sort of favorite one in there is the summary within a, so you get the summary within a project, but you also get the summary within a contract itself. So this is looking at across all contracts. This is all the different contracts, what their value are, and then as you claim against them, they'll get yellow bars against this. So you can kind of see progress against that. If you've got variations, it'll split up that in here, and you can see how much of the pie is variations. Thankfully, this must be a well-managed business because there's not many of those. Or a lot of people good at pounding desks. And so then if I actually go in on a particular contract, there's a summary sub-navigation, which doesn't exist in 16. And that, again, here shows me, so depending on your role, it'll take you to a different sub-nav. It took me to value, but I just jumped back to summary, and, you know, quite a nice summary of that particular project, how much has been claimed, what the value is, who's the client, who's the supplier. If you've got accounting integration on it, it'll put AR and AP values in there. And yeah, nice, easy visuals on the eye to read to start to see how you're performing at different levels, portfolio, project, and at contract level. Okay, so as I said, there were a lot more charts, resource planning charts coming into resources, summary, portfolio summary charts coming in, and then an expanded set for each of these with an interface yet to be defined for an admin, or be interested in users' thoughts as to what level of role should be able to change the charts, probably program manager as well, able to drag in different charts and replace charts with others dynamically. So that's coming sometime into the future, but this is not a bad start. All right, so we're in the contracts module now. We're going to spend a bit of time here just to go through the way this works. And contracts are used for quite a lot of reasons. So one of the benefits of UniPhi 17 is that it's actually enabled us to break up the sort of sub-navigation, if you like, so that different users would go to different sub-navs. Just going to change projects. Must be locked down. I've forgotten which was my good project. Okay. Let's go into this one. Okay. So you can see here quite a long sub-navigation structure within the new contracts module. Believe it or not, and in the blog today I write that the data that's in details, value, invoice, and schedule was actually in one screen in UniPhi 16. So everything that's displayed in these three was in one screen, which made it incredibly busy and challenging for people to use. This enables us to scale contracts larger. You'll see that this particular contract we're looking at is quite considerable in scale. We're only looking at level 1 now, and in the contract value section, which sets up the original contract value and adjusted contract value with variations. You can see even at level 1, there's quite a large structure. And if I roll it out to all, which could have n levels, so that's a change within UniPhi. Before it was just basic headings and roll up headings and deliverables underneath. You can see now that we've got quite a big WBS there. We still need to support even bigger than that, but the way we do that is through the drill-in functions, and all kind of becomes less relevant because it's too big to work on in one go. So you kind of start at level 1, drill into level 2, etc., etc. And so it scales quite well. You can have small contracts, they lay out in all, and you never need to filter them, and you just work in that. Or you can have large contracts where you use leveling filter to basically make it easier to find things, and you can use search up top for variations and things like that, because this will include variations in the second screen. And obviously we know they can go out to hundreds, if not thousands of lines, and that'll all be supported as well. And so by breaking up the screens, again, different people tend to use different parts of the system. For the revenue contracts, this screen can become a estimating platform. We did a webinar on that a couple of weeks ago. And so you would have people who do your estimates at the moment, potentially, technical directors and the like, potentially using this system to do their estimates, or just importing them from a spreadsheet if that's how they're currently doing it, or however they're doing it. They could use this. So you'd have those users. Then you would have different like project leaders or admin people doing the invoicing. And so they can be focused on the invoice navigation and be updating that for the projects. Now, again, different users for different things. This could also be used by, PM consultants and QS consultants. We have 2 views to support that. So we're looking at a cost contract here that's not internal. It's certifying or recommending on behalf of someone else that they pay their bill. And there's 2 views in this. This one is the more simpler version for PM consultants to certify a progress claim that comes from either a consultant or a builder. And then if I get a recommendation, you get a much broader view, which I'll just lower the screen a little bit, resolution. And you can see on this that we've got color-coded sections, which we couldn't do before, to demonstrate what section you might be filling in. So the contractor submits their claim, you can put those values in, you assess against that as a QS, you've got variances dynamically being populated. This was the original contract value. And as I scroll down, the other thing to note is that the headings lock, which they didn't do in previous versions. So as you scroll down, you can see what you're doing. You don't have to memorize what column you're in. And when you've got that many columns, it's quite an important aspect to that application. You can also import and export this data. So you could import it out, update it in Excel, export it out, update it in Excel and import it back in. And then the next thing to recognize within this screen is in UniPhi 16 and before, we always had quite a useful section within the one screen, which was related templates. And so that just guided people as to these are contract templates. They're not any other type of template, like a progress report or something that's not contractually related. Now we've been able to get even more contextual because we've split things up. So instead of just having a list of things like progress certificate, variation order, project manager's instructions, original contract, purchase order, whatever that is, it depends on which new document button you click. So I'm in invoices, and when I click new document, the template list will be limited to templates that have something to do with an invoice. And so again, it's a bit like follow the bouncing ball. You can get someone a little bit less experienced, and they start to fill in the data, then they need to create a document from it. They click new document. If I jump back to value, I can, if I generate a document here, it's going to be something that's actually related to the contract. So it could be an instruction, it could be the purchase order, it could be the consultant's contract, or it could be an AC contract, or whatever it is, and you've got that listed there. This is quite long because demonstration, but still not excessively so. And similarly, if I scroll down to variation and I put one in, you got this new document capability to then show you the variation order for a document. So clicking new document, this list is just the variation order related informations. And so every time there's a variation order in a template, that'll be listed in there. You're getting contextual information as you go across. The other key thing that we tried to do in this particular version, I'll just go into a different contract for that, is make things easier to set up. And so if I click on this one here, it won't have much in it. It's all blank. Instead of hitting an add button and then entering a deliverable and then save and then add and then enter a deliverable, save, add, enter, save, you can just start typing in. And so it's all very Excel sort of tabbing down. You're writing your deliverables, and now the data's got to come from somewhere. If you're getting it from external, you can import it in, but if you're creating it, then you're keying it into Excel, you can key it into here. It's going to be the same kind of speed. Once you've done that, you can then structure this up. If that's level 1 and these are subtasks within that webinar, we can click these links and just embed that in. Previously, you would have had to have ordered that structure up. If I then go back to all, we'll see that indentation. It had a depth filter on it of 1. And so, quick entry, I've put data entry in the wrong spot. I need to drag that up to here. You can just drag it around, and then you can start on the next and just keep going. There's no need to code things or anything like that. You can do that later. If you are coding, you can code at the high level and it'll cascade down for that particular level. So they all cascade down. And if there's only one difference after that, you can then change it. This chart of accounts only has 1 code. And so we've tried to do lots of things like that. The only other thing to note within this screen is that the pending status there, you could only have a contract status in UniPhi 16 and before. Now you can break your contracts down into separate portions. And essentially the way you would do that is if you've let this portion of the contract, you would make that as an active contract. That label is your label. You can make that read whatever you want. And this becomes a second portion that hasn't been let yet. So a contract can be active, but its values can be separated out by active and pending to say this much is committed, this much is pending, depending on whether the project goes ahead. But at least you've been given a price by an architect for 4 phases. You've only let the first one. You still know what they quoted for those other 3 phases, but you're not committing that whole lot to the contract value as a committed value straight away in the cost report. Speaking of cost reports, if we go to the dashboards, there's also now, I had to do dashboards first to get to the navigation for this one. There's an allocation subnav. The reason it's here is it's actually across all contracts. It's not within a contract. What happens there is you have your contracts and they have values and you have a budget and you code to them. And often you'll miscode. So at the moment, these are all going to the code called CF. If I did that incorrectly, not a great demonstration because there's only 1 code. Let me just jump into a different one now. And because of the chart of accounts I was in. because they're going to different charts of accounts. It's just showing which contracts. That's better. So it's not within a contract. It's all contracts that are linking to this particular chart of accounts, which comes into the cost module I'll show you in a moment. So we can see here that we've $10 million over budget on the main works code, and there's all these other codes. And I could start to try and reallocate the deliverables that go to this particular code into a different code. So say ICT contractor. If I drag that across to ICT contractor, the value of that particular line goes against ICT contractor, comes out of main works. And so it was always a challenge in the past to work out where you had miscoded, and then you had to go into the contract deliverable and go to accounting view and recode those contracts. Now you can get a visual of it here. Again, they're all, those of you with decent screen sizes will probably be able to see more of this. I'm on a little laptop. And yeah, you can then just work through, if there's other contracts going to this particular screen, they'll be listed as well, and just recode things out to a different code. And so, yeah, hopefully that makes it easier to determine where the costs are coming from and how the cost report is being developed. Because when I click on the cost module and I select post contract, that's where this data is coming from. So there actually is no budget, but the recoding that I just did then with the 335 and 7426 is all under the original contract value. So all the contracts are coming into the commitments and the uncommitted lines. And then that's compared to a budget that you've established in the cost module under budget. And so the reallocation of those codes, if you needed to know, oh, that shouldn't be, what's that 7426? We haven't got any ICT contractors. You would go to the contracts module, look up what's mapped to ICT contractor and remove it to somewhere else. Okay, just looking. Oh, yeah. So there's only one other bit on that sort of structuring up your contract that I wanted to sort of reiterate. Most of these things have been covered in detail in various blogs that you can and webinars you can go back and have a look at. But it's just that drilling effect. So at the moment we're at level 1. You can see it's got a different color, it means it's got something underneath it, whereas this one doesn't. So there's only that level, there's nothing underneath it. If I click on this little arrow over here, it takes me into that MSR02 July 17 provision for traffic, and you can now see the 3 deliverables underneath that. So it just depends on the scale of contract deliverables that you're managing. If you've got like 100, you could probably just leave it on all. If you've got more than 100, you're probably going to need this level strategy to manage the different sections as you go through. So you'd be drilling in and then clicking the up arrow to go back, and then drilling into the next one. And that capability is on all of these screens. So if I go to invoice, the same effect. You can drill in on that particular one, update it, and then move out and keep working. So yeah, it depends on the scale. You're either going to use level 1, level 2, level 3, 4, 5, or all. On this particular contract, because it's quite sizable, you may be that's just a level 1 size, just managing it through levels and drilling into the relevant level when doing things. Okay. So while I'm in the invoicing view, probably my favorite out of all of that, go to a contract that has a claim. So in this dashboard here, you've got % complete. I just want to go into this one. We go to invoice. All right, that's no good either, guys. Sorry, just bear with us a sec. Need something that's fully complete. So I'm just looking at the % complete line here. That one's 74, maybe one of the deliverables there will be 100% with a bit of luck. You can see now the progress bar going against the contract sums. You can see that progress visually there. And in the invoice, you see preliminaries here has been fully claimed. I'll just go all. And so you might have a long contract that over time you're going to have some things finished before others. Up here, there's a little incomplete or all. And so when you do, there was more than 101. I had incomplete already on. So when you do the incomplete, it basically eliminates all the ones that are 100%. except for the fact that this one's not actually finished claiming yet. So it is 100%, but you're in the process of claiming it, and that's why that's still there. That is on some of our contracts that have got a lot of lines on them. That's just been a massive productivity saver in working out what you're claiming for in a current month. And so, yeah, that works both on the original contract value and the variations that you're working through. I imagine variations, particularly in cost contracts that get claimed out 100%, that piece of feature is going to be quite well received. So something simple, but quite valuable. This little header thing here is just the way we're describing the totals now. They used to be in the footer. And so you get a nice little ribbon of high level information about the current claim, 11,858 that you're raising at the moment. So now what I'm going to do is just go through the last 4 screens relatively quickly. The schedule screen in UniPhi 16, you could schedule contract deliverables and then auto phase them if you wish. This has been expanded quite considerably. You can see here, you've got 2, I need to go into a revenue one. Sorry guys, just filter. This is new aggregates as well, by the way. You can do different filtering on the contracts now into netting off revenue and internal costs, just looking at your external. So again, different roles. If I'm the commercial manager of a project, I'd be looking at revenue and internal cost and net. If I'm the PM and QS of the project on behalf of the client, I'd be looking at project cost because I'm managing that money on behalf of someone else. And so these filters just differentiate and filter out to give you the view that you need for your job. I just select revenue. And in the schedule, you'll see there's a toggle between 2 different views. And so the concept here is if you've scheduled out your contract with hours, you can start and end date those deliverables and phase those hours over time. And that will normally be different to how you're going to invoice for the job. And so you've got one profile which says this is the way I'm going to spend time on the job and the effort profile of that. And then the other, it says this is when I'm going to invoice, which is generally related to milestone claiming and the like. And so when we do cash flow, we could have a different schedule. We've got some tricks around moving from one to the other. You can call it a milestone method and it'll take the end date of your effort schedule and put that in as the milestone claim. But often you may have structured this up to be like, portions of milestones. And so in which case in that, you might change this particular unit to be percent rather than currency. And then you can go against a particular deliverable and say, we're going to claim 20% in August, we're going to claim 20% in November, etc. Depending on how the contract was structured, you can then estimate that out and put that in. And then there's the ability to, fill these down into other sections. If I tick those, I can fill them down into the other sections that are common with that profile and start to build up my cash flow forecast from that perspective. And with effort, probably more on the start and end dates, and then selecting a relevant, linear-based or S-curve-based methodology for phasing that information out. The benefits and the flow-on effect of that are extreme. You can't really do you can't do earned value without that baseline effort. And so you need to set up your effort view with a baseline of hours. That becomes your planned profile. And then when you go into earned value, you can then start to update how you're actually going in terms of earned, and that will compare to your timesheets, which is how you're actually going in terms of effort spent, and tell you how much pile of proverbial that you're in. And so I'll just jump to earned value now. And so this was the webinar from last week, I think. And essentially, again, this is where you're profiling how you're performing on that contract rather than, timesheets tells you how much effort you've put on it. The schedule tells you how much you thought you were going to put. This says how much you're actually earning for the effort you're putting on it. There's 2 key elements to that. You need to put in a milestone grouping for each deliverable. And so you'll have, your own structure there for how you're going to validate that this deliverable was done. And every time you go through that, it will get an earned value for doing that particular piece of work. So it's 40% complete. There isn't any because it didn't have any contract value. Do it on this one. again, I'm doing this at level 1, it'll cascade down. So you don't have to do it. You can do your effort estimate at level 2 or 3 or 4 and then do your own value at level 1. There's nothing stopping you doing that. And on this occasion, because there's a contract value, it will come in with an earned value on that particular price. And then your graphics start to populate on how you're doing from the 3 metrics that make up earned value. So that one's pretty exciting for me. Be interesting to see the take up, but we've got quite a few clients using our project-based earned value, and I think some others holding back because it didn't give them the detail they need. We're hoping this does. And we'll be presenting this at various seminars and conferences. There's a big project controls conference in MCG, COVID permitting, in November. Looking less likely now, but you never know. And yeah, this will be something that we really put out into the marketplace for those larger projects that people are trying to get a handle on, especially in design phase. Are they spending way too much time on design and not progressing fast enough to actually make money out of the job? The last two, excluding custom fields, which is pretty obvious, all around finding information. And so in the registers, they're aggregated into variations and invoices and then any other related documents. So if you're doing instruction notices or other things there, you can filter on that template and it'll show you. You can then access the documents that you find if there are any. There hasn't been an order issued on this variation yet. But these are the invoices that have been certified or raised if it's consulting, which I think, revenue, sorry, which I think this is. And so, yeah, that's all about trying to find information because it's all contextual to the contract. You know, you don't have to do a search in documents or look through communication correspondence. You can just go to the contract and see all of the registers that have been raised against that. And then in the correspondence, you've got a date range there. Any correspondence that's gone out will be listed there into various types, like comments against issues, documents, emails, issues themselves. And then if they're categorized, like the template type or the issue category, they'll be listed there as well. And so, again, a way to really narrow down your search for something without having to do free search. You can go to the contract you're concerned with, go to the correspondence and see all of the emails you've logged from the Outlook add-ins, all of the emails you've sent out from document instruction notices, all of the progress certificates, all of the invoices, all of the variation orders, you name it, all listed there for just that contract on that particular project. So they are the changes to the contracts module, sort of broad overview. I probably missed a few little key elements to it. And that combined with charts are the major changes. As I mentioned, there's a little bit of tweaking in risks, but pretty much everything else is left untouched. Just going to launch another poll here. If I can. Where do I get to my second one? Oh, there it is. And this is about our next webinar series, because essentially this is the last one on UniPhi 17. It set up itself for a nice series of webinars. We did 6 of them. We probably could have done a couple more. But what we're interested in is where do we go from here? And so while we've got a captured audience, I've just launched the poll. There's a few options there. It is multiple choice, so you can select more than one. But we might do a broader survey to our user base to get this fleshed out a bit, but first in, best dressed, I reckon. If you don't have your preferred option there in the list, then please write in the comments a particular piece of UniPhi that you would like to know more about. If you don't think these are worth doing, just say none, and that would save me the effort. And so, yeah, spend a couple of minutes there telling us about that. And then I'm just going to, while you're doing that, just give you an idea of where we're going. So this is webinars on existing functionality. Can't really do webinars on things that don't exist. Where we're going is starting to leverage the data that we capture in UniPhi. So I think most people would agree that we capture, if it's used heavily, quite a lot of data, even if it's only used heavily in, say, for example, timesheets, we still capture a lot of data on a UniPhi deployment. And so we're looking at ways to leverage that data better. Now, UniPhi 17 has all these visuals that might help you unlock sort of unknown knowledge in the system. You never know. But where we're hoping UniPhi 18 will put us is something like this. And so this is where you have just logged an issue, redesign markup Western conduit crossing, right? That's how you've described it. So you just free text as you would now the description. And then what you're able to do is click a little icon against that issue, which means find similar. And it uses some machine learning algorithms that trawl the database and come back with the 3 most likely similar issues that relate to your particular issue you just logged. It'll put a whole heap of metadata around that so you can get context. It'll give you a link to those issues so you can click on them and see the comments and what was done about it, when it was resolved, how long it took to resolve, what its cost was if you're tracking against that, who was involved. So you might be able to contact them. So on Hover, you'd get contact details or link to their profile page, and then a brief description of how it was resolved so that you can get a feeling of whether it is similar or not. So that's just one example of using machine learning to start giving feedback to people on assisting them managing their projects. Broader ones will be when you create a new project and you describe that project with a bunch of metadata and commentary. You can then, when you've created it, use similar projects to create an estimate for your services, create an overall budget estimate for the client that's in that project, a schedule timeline along the life cycle phases, what milestones are normally used to track that, what earned value stage gates, etc. So you'll get an interface that will reveal all the common things you'll need to do on that project, even though you've only just created it in the system. Simon's just said how many beards were needed to resolve that issue. Okay, so we've had a request for more solutions focused presentation. So around that would be, say, you need to do project controls. We could do a project controls webinar. You need to do practice management. We can do timesheet, invoicing, profitability, resource planning type views. So that would be fine. We'll look to those in the future. Oops, I pressed the wrong button. So just share the results of what was looked for. Dashboards and reporting were the highest. One, risk management, which is cool. Thankfully, no one said they didn't like attending, so that's very nice of you. Thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. And yeah, we'll pick up all of those, seeing as you were all gracious enough to attend the session and you've requested those things. So I'm not sure the frequency yet. That would be another thing I'd be interested in. So again, how often you'd like to see these run, let us know in the comments or contact us after the session. Probably should have asked that question as a polling question, but we will schedule something on resource planning, earned value, document control, dashboards, and risk management in the coming months. But that completes the UniPhi 17 version of webinars. I'm just going to stop the recording now. And if there's any questions, happy to answer them.